Okay, so obviously the title of this video is called Sidegrades. If you don't know what a sidegrade is, then let me explain. A sidegrade is something that isn't obviously better or worse than something similar when compared. So the main reason I wanted to talk about sidegrades today is because Bungie is doing away with sunsetting. So every weapon that is added to the game will remain in the game. But, and that's a big but, we don't know what extent a new weapon being added to the game will have new and interesting perks. In other words, look at the Deepstone Crypt weapons, where each weapon can roll with the perk called Reconstruction, which is basically auto-loading holster and overflow combined. This is a great perk which solely elevates the Deepstone Crypt weapons into some of the best in the game. While the perk is one of the best in the game, we don't know if Bungie thinks this perk is too strong in a world where sunsetting doesn't exist. My main fear I'm getting at here is that Bungie might not feel like making really strong perks going forward. But that's where a sidegrade can come into play, and more specifically where adept weapons can come into play. But the current state of adept weapons are nothing more than the standard weapon that has access to a new shader, says adept in the name, and can use adept mods. While we're here, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button. So how do sidegrades and adept weapons help with this? The only thing that is needed to make adept weapons have more of an identity, and to make sidegrade weapons is to make more use of intrinsic perks. If you don't know what an intrinsic perk is, simply go look at the Felwinter's Lie shotgun perk called Shot Package, which is exclusive to Felwinter's Lie, and this is what makes Felwinter special and better than most shotguns, because it gives it extremely further range than most shotguns. But then go look at adept weapons. For example, the adept version of the Swarm, both in the collections and light.gg, there is nothing different from this weapon and the normal Swarm. This leads to an easy solution. Simply take a bunch of the middling to bad tier perks and make them intrinsic on adept weapons. What this does is not only give a purpose to those bad perks, but also makes adept weapons more useful, which they should be since they have to do the hardest stuff in the game to get them. Imagine a world where all the Deepstone Crypt weapons had osmosis intrinsically, typically a terrible perk due to opportunity cost, but in this case it's just an add-on to those weapons. The primary reason Bungie needs to do something is because they've already stated that they want to bring back hard mode raids and give us hard mode dungeons, where both drop adept raid or dungeon weapons. If nothing is done, then there will be nothing special about those weapons other than the 3 tiny little boosts. The reason I specify bad perks should only be the ones used for intrinsic perks is because that's how a sidegrade should work. There shouldn't be anything that is super over the top better than the other options, so keeping this intrinsic perk pool only open to bad perks allows this to happen. Another key point to this design is to make sure that the intrinsic is always a static perk, and all things from the same place have a shared intrinsic perk. So in the Deepstone Crypt example, all the weapons would have osmosis, and could only have osmosis as the intrinsic perk. So you wouldn't be grinding for god roll intrinsic perks. You would know that a weapon comes from Deepstone Crypt, it has osmosis. You know a weapon comes from Leviathan, it has field prep. You know that a weapon from Vault of Glass, it has XYZ or something. Trials weapons would have celerity, Nightfall weapons would have bottomless grief, etc. Another great benefit that Bungie would be able to take advantage of by doing this is that they would be able to give us semi-mediocre third and fourth column perks on raid weapons, dungeon weapons, and stuff, because we know that there would be an intrinsic perk. So here's an example. You get a auto rifle from Vault of Glass, but its third perk, the best perk on there is Rangefinder, and the fourth perk, the best perk on there is, let's say, Dragonfly. But then, since the fact that we know it's coming from hard mode Vault of Glass, we know that the intrinsic perk on hard mode Vault of Glass weapons is Chain Reaction. So then you have this auto rifle with Rangefinder, Chain Reaction, and Dragonfly. You get this badass sort of Fatebringer-esque auto rifle from Vault of Glass. Now obviously in this example, Chain Reaction is pretty good on its own, but this is just an example of how cool those VOG weapons could be if you decided to run through the hard mode. Then obviously this would be translated to every other raid and every other dungeon, and those are just examples, you know, don't quote me on what perks would be where or whatever. I'm just saying, here's the general design, go run with it. Please let me know in the comment below what kind of perks you would like to see used for intrinsics if Bungie were to do this. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, a thumbs up is appreciated. If you would like to see more of my content, hit the subscribe button. If you would like to be notified of my uploads, hit the bell after subscribing. Thanks for watching and have a good